Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to another edition of Safe Conversations. Paul, how you doing?
I'm ready to get after this one.
Ready to enter in some conversation. We've been talking about relationships.
Yep.
We've been talking about from preschoolers to teenagers to
Hit all the major areas.
on how it how relationships work and why individuals act and react the way they do. And so I encourage everyone to go back and listen to those podcasts and videos. I think it'll be very helpful. But today we kind of we thought about doing something a little different. So we'll give this a try because we're maybe pull back the curtain on our relationship. Maybe that will let people see how friendships, how they develop, and how can they have a strong friendship. Because I think, Paul, we both would agree that Scripture places an emphasis on the need for relationships, and of course, friendship one of those, and how important it is. So,
on my side, if speaking for the psychology and the neuroscience, there are the experts that would say the brain, and they'll use this language, is a social organ, meaning designed to connect. When we talked about children, we use attachment, but we talk about teens and adults with attachment. So the brain, they're simply saying something I believe that was something we knew about for a long time.
Well, that's a little bit of a paradigm shift, I think, for most people to say that the brain is a social organ. Because I don't think we don't think it that way.
No. I don't know what comes to your mind, but I think of the brain as a thinking, not even a feeling organ.
A computer.
Actually. Yeah, computer.
Computer comes to mind for me.
Mechanical.
Mm-hmm. Pre-programmed to just respond to what data comes to it. It responds.
So I do think when we say relational, social, that it has an impact on people. We know now from science that the brain is designed to do that. So when people are having pulls to relationship, and I know we'll reference ours along the way, it's not are they going to have it, it's how effective is it going to be. And I think some of what we could talk about today is what makes a friendship more effective or less effective.
Well, perfect. Let's go there.
Yeah. Well,
what makes a friendship effective? What makes it good?
Well, I would say for us, something we have that more depth relationships have to have is time in the relationship. I don't think, no matter how much your social brain wants one fast and wants it to be in a deep way fast, if that's the orientation of the person, it just doesn't happen fast. And so for people to not get in a hurry with relationship building, I think of high schoolers and junior hires saying, I found my best friend. And I'm going, you've only known them 5 minutes. And God, you'll probably get over that at some point. We need to give that time to see if, from a spiritual perspective, is God in what He's designed in me and you, that could be built, because I don't think I can build that with every single person out there.
Man, interesting, because what comes to my mind is what I would refer to as a cultural resistance to friendship then, because it seems like our whole existence is designed for the fast and quick. And it's kind of what we're after. And so I'm guessing, we could involve social media. We can involve all kinds of things into this. Are these things actually hindering people developing really close friendships?
To me, they could be a tool that would help. But here's what has to happen in a relationship, and I'll speak of it from a brain perspective. Right side and kind of upstairs part of the brain, right side, is a more image, feeling, intuitive part of the brain, left side more cognitive. It's not really exactly like that, but that's a good way to explain it. And depth relationships are right brain to right brain. So we can be you and I will do this at times. We can theologize, or we can talk about psychology or a variety of things in an academic way. And I'm very aware of that, but it's very different when one of us moves into talking about our personal life and says, God, this is what I'm wrestling with, or this is what's going on. And it becomes, to me, from a Christian background, somewhat confessional. It doesn't always have to be of sin, but confession of weakness. Or challenges.
Yeah.
In that sense.
Yeah. So it takes time to sense from another person the safety.
Yeah.
To feel like you can go into your own life and bring out your own vulnerabilities, your own weaknesses. Yeah. So it takes
trust element in there. Yeah, safety. Yeah. If people can reference back to attachment issues, safety allows a stability where a child can explore with this curiosity. Good friendships are going to have that curiosity component. That's where it's a little bit entrepreneurial in that I can say my ideas, new and weird, and you'll kind of at least hear those out, and then you'll give me some feedback on that. The word you said that I think for a lot of people, and I want to say my opinion, more men, is vulnerable. We have our brains were never taught growing up in the way we were socialized that vulnerable is good. So if I am broken and weak and fragile, I am not going to be affirmed for that. Not the way I grew up. So I learned to literally compartmentalize and push away the vulnerability that would give me true intimacy with God and others. It's a real upside down thing.
So if somebody's listening right now and they're going, okay, vulnerable, what is there an easy way to define what we mean when we say being vulnerable?
Yeah, there are a number of ways that I think about it. It's when I am willing in our friendship to disclose something in me that I might think I will get rejected for.
Okay.
Because there's some things I can disclose, like it's real easy to talk about my education because I don't get rejected for that. But if I were to talk about my doubting God to somebody, a lot of those episodes where, and I'm going to say it's normal, but you run into those, that's not something I would just sort of put out there.
Right.
It's more vulnerable. It's a risk.
But for a moment, to move beyond a surface friendship, to move beyond, just chatting about the weather and to get into, being vulnerable. What has to exist in a relationship for that to happen? You follow what I'm saying? Like what has to be there? We mentioned safety, but what has to be there within the person? What do they have to feel? What do they have to think? What do they have to convey? For instance, I guess maybe I would even answer this myself. So based on what you just said. So I'm able to say to you what I'm struggling with, knowing I'm not going to be rejected.
Yes. There's not that automatic wincing like, did I say something that I'm going to get emotionally sort of smacked for?
I think the word I'm taking a long way to get to is shame. I'm not going to be shamed.
I think that's an accurate word. Yeah, it's shame. People don't connect to shame, though, Fred, very much. People think about embarrassment because shame is almost too shameful to even define, because shame is experienced in the body in a visceral way
Yeah.
before we ever call it shame. With a little kid, they'll need to be around 2, but when they do something wrong, they'll do this. They'll unless they're trained not to. There's this natural, and that is across the ethnic groups in the world, in different language groups. That response, that head down or kind of shoulders bent over, sort of a collapse, is very common.
Yeah, so you're saying that's something you feel in the body, because I know for me, when I feel shame, there is not only the dropping of the head, I feel it. I feel like this redness that comes
blood comes up
blood.
there.
It
Yes.
changes.
Yes.
Heart rate, everything has to be going on when that happens.
Right.
And it's a big deal.
Well, we teach people in the counseling model that I use to make their body their friend, because it's going to give cues that we've just ignored. Maybe it was good that we ignored them growing up because maybe we wouldn't have made it as successfully, their defenses around that. But the body really will tell you whether it's a tight gut or shoulders or the blood kind of going to the face. Let me example a shame experience for me. I was very, very, very young doing counseling, and I was doing couple work in East Texas. And at the end of the session, a man gave me the money and said, he looked me right in the face, and now remember everybody, I'm a compliant. I don't want to fight. I can avoid, I can do those things. He gave me the money and said, I can't believe I'm paying you for that. And rather than me thinking, well, this is what my therapist buddies would say, we must have hit something pretty raw for that guy. I'm going like, I am a horrible, then I'm doing the whole body thing, because I literally have a pretty significant history of shame. So I'm very familiar with it without even, before I even knew the language. I had an orientation in relationships to be shame-based.
Yeah, I hope that maybe in a future episode we can kind of dive into shame and kind of unpack it a little bit. But I'm thinking right now, so maybe individuals are thinking, yeah, I've got friends, but they're acknowledging that it's surface.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, we get together, we enjoy each other, but we don't really ever go deep. So maybe the question is not how do you share, how can you become that friend that another individual can feel safe with? Again, there has to be time, there has to be connection truly, but what is it? How can a person become the kind of friend that somebody would feel safe with?
Yeah, there's several things that just jump to the front of my mind. One is something we don't think about. The way God has designed my person, meaning the way my face expresses, my size, sort of, I hate to use the word aura, because it's misunderstood, but sort of this aura that I give off about myself. There are some people that who they are naturally, based on our culture, don't look safe. Now I'm talking before they even try to be safe. I studied with a guy that I became a friend with, and this would have been in the 70s, long, rough-looking hair, Fu Manchu. He's 6'3", and his face his brow is frowny all the time. And we critiqued him pretty hard about not knowing how to be safe with clients when we would give feedback in these video sessions with just role playing. Because he comes into the session with a frowny brow, he's huge, and he goes, "How you doing?" I mean, it just like scares them spitless. And they're going like, I'm miraculously healed, man.
Yeah.
I don't even
I'm
need this
doing
session.
great.
Yeah, and if you look at me with a compliant and all those things, it really does, I just appear less threatening. That's what people, maybe that's an idea. Does my person, not even me intending, carry some sense of threat? Another thing is eyebrows up are always safer than eyebrows down. I mean, this seems so silly, but you get the eyebrows down, that's an anger position.
It is an anger position.
Disappointed in you.
Yeah, because I know for my family, the Youngs, we joke with each other about the Young frown. I will say this: my brothers, the wives, will each talk about how each of the Youngs have a young frown.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost like the default position.
Like automatic.
It's
just
almost
happens.
like if you're not thinking about it, you're just like, I think if I'm driving or riding, I wonder, do I just look like a frowny?
Mm-hmm.
So is this,
Yeah.
I know it's simple, but is that something people practice? Is that something
Mm-hmm.
people have to become consciously aware
You have to.
of?
To me, this is a big idea for myself, but any change is going to have a practice of some sort. So you have to be aware of your face. When I'm confronting people, I'm real serious about the eyebrows up, even though my frowny brow is not as threatening, but I'm going, and it feels different to even confront with your eyebrows up. Because there's something about this, like I'm guarding me, I'm protecting me, I'm getting ready, and we're going to go to battle here,
Yeah. That's just like eyebrows up. Well, I'm just learning something right here. I feel bad because I'm in front of a camera because I want to just practice putting the eyebrows up. It's probably not a really good idea.
Another component is voice tone.
Yeah.
And some people have a more direct, the voice tone is very direct, and it doesn't have a whole lot of moving up and down. And it sounds like this, da, 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 da.
Yeah.
Now, the earliest memories of a child pre-verbal are nonverbals. So at the foundational wiring of the brain is a learning of nonverbals, and those nonverbals are pretty consistent, again, across ethnic groups and nations. So a child with no memory of it knows how to respond to the nonverbals. So they are a little harder to catch. Voice tone's difficult. Eyebrows are difficult. Sometimes people push back in chairs. Sometimes people do this. Sometimes people do this, and it means nothing. I mean, I'm not one who would believe every arm cross means I'm against you. It could be my arms are tired. But there are certain things that we have learned that are very natural.
Yeah, because when it comes to the verbal and the tone, I don't currently have a dog. We've had dogs, much more of a dog person. Cats, another story. But it's interesting with dogs. Dogs really primarily just pick up on tone, because you can tell a dog, you're a stupid dog. But if you say it in a loving, like, you're a stupid dog, that dog is wagging his tail, it's loving. And you can do the opposite,
Yes.
If you're in a real tone, you're a good dog, but you're doing it in a way that's harsh. The dog responds to tone. So it is important. I'm thinking as we're going through this, that's really applicable when couples are engaged in a conflict or in a tense situation, and they're trying to work through an issue.
That's right.
They're actually friends or any kind of relationship. They're actually, all of these things are tools.
Yes. Well, they cross trigger many times in relationships. You remind me, because my brain is referencing my history as I'm interacting with you. If I'm at the beginning of a relationship, I'm referencing everybody that looks like that, talks like that. And I have this one feature that triggers me, and it had to do with my mother, who could raise one eyebrow. When that happens, Mom's going to get you. And so I had to learn that people that, and praise God, my wife that can't do that. God stapled the eyebrow down, something. But there are those type triggers, and we cross trigger. We're often interacting with our past, not the person in front of us. Like, I can put my mom's head on somebody else's body, is what I would say. It's a projection.
Oh, my goodness. So we're often engaging with our past.
in our present relationships. That's the cool thing about friendship. If it can go far enough, you actually begin to work your stuff with a person as there's enough disclosing to see those areas that need to be worked.
And that working your stuff is not a, hey, let's stand down and here's point 1, 2, and 3. Mm-hmm. It's much more organic.
Real organic. But if there comes a point that you've heard me in our friendship talk about the compliance and all, and I can talk about that without wondering what you're going to think. Am I going to be rejected? And I'm not. And so it allows me to then focus on that if I wanted to. So there is in a friendship a mirroring.
Okay.
Just a real quick flash thought that hit me. The basic assumption that I have about humanity is we can't see ourselves clearly without help. We can't do it on our own. So when I hear, search me, O God, and know my heart, I think God is saying you need help. You can't do this on your own. So even engaging a relationship, trying to figure it out as you go for a friendship is a very honorable and good thing. And there is a way to know at what depth you are based on the topics you talk about. There's a way to know, like you mentioned, sort of the casual conversations, how you doing, how about those Chiefs, when a person moves from that type talk to topics where they give a cognitive opinion, that's more vulnerable. Because I've said, I believe this about this issue, this handgun issue, I mean, whatever it is.
Right.
I've put myself out there where that's a little vulnerability. If you move down to the emotional level and people are beginning to say, not only do I think that, but I feel, and if they can identify them or go, I don't really know what I feel, can you help me with, that level? And that level in our culture has been feminized, the feeling part. I would say it's not a feminizing of emotions, it's a deforming of the men that we've done in our socialization process, because we should have access to both of those.
Oh, goodness. I wish I had something to write down. Yeah, that was brought up all kinds of things, because for those who are men who are listening and saying, develop a friendship, a deeper friendship, is it typically, generally not trying to stereotype, and maybe I am, and if I am, please correct me, but isn't it easier for females to have this kind of relationship than men?
Research, if I can speak to that, would say that's true for our culture. But I always remember that people are shaped by a socialization process. So what we find, and I don't know much outside of our culture as far as what's available research-wise, we would say that. But when I look at Jesus, which is an important thing.
True.
Okay, and I'm going to go, okay, that can apply to male or females, but he seems to access cognitive, emotional, in a very fluid way. So you want to think of, how do I become more integrated? Because integration of the self in Christ, having access to all of me with him, is what health is to me. So my emotions, so when I'm talking about moving to deeper levels of friendship, because underneath that emotion is this very raw ability to say to someone, I really need, because we were taught not to say this very early. Don't need, because you'll be disappointed, you'll be hurt, you'll be rejected. But in that very, very depth relationship, there's the ability to say, I need, I want.
Well, Paul, that kind of brings up a really, maybe kind of sets us up for another episode discussion, because I really like the concept of, in my mind, I would like to continue to, what I'm saying, push people, encourage people toward a friendship.
Yep.
And I do think sometimes men struggle with that. and then you brought our relationship with Christ into it. So I think there are several things we can kind of piggyback on those thoughts and
it's a good idea.
go off into another episode. So, well, thanks for joining us, and look forward to seeing you next time.